chat and stuff. Okay.
All right, Dave, you ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead. All right, grab the mic and you're ready. Just, it's right here. It's right there, and get started. All right, I'm gonna stop again and we'll start it. All right, Dave.
I'd like to welcome all of you to the weekly meeting of the Cognitive Complexes, the playground for people who think. I'm David Zucker, the assistant to the moderator, Tim Bolzer. First of all, our policies. Our rule is one fool at a time. Second, there is no personal attack. Two, a $3 tuition charge will be collected from everyone here in order to defray its expenses. Next, this restaurant is in business to make money. It's not in business for us. So a food and drink purchase will be required of those of you here at the restaurant. And so you might as well get yourself some dinner or something else to eat or drink. Our format is as follows. First, we will have announcements. Our coordinator, Charlie Paydock, will announce the upcoming programs. Then anyone else who has anyone else who has announcements of neighborhood or community interest can make that. Then our program will speak. Then
Go ahead.
my speaker will talk for about an hour or so, and then there will be questions and answers. Questions, this is like Jeopardy. Questions must be in that form. Save your rebuttals, save your speeches for the rebuttals. Otherwise, you may be asked, what's your question? Next, we will have rebuttals. Tim will portion out the time.
Okay. All right. Welcome.
All right, let's go to announcements.
All
Are
right,
you done?
Charlie.
Hold on, Charlie. All right. And then rebuttals. All right, questions must be, no, give a portion of the time, and anyone can talk about anything else, about anything that they want to, although we prefer you rebut the speaker, but it must be within the time allowed as provided by Tim, and then the speaker will get the last word. All right, Charlie, go ahead with the announcements.
All right, I'll be very quick tonight. Number one, please mute yourself if you haven't done so already, so as not to interrupt the speaker. Two, well, the people in the restaurant, please keep quiet because it interrupts the program. All right. First of all, one and two things only tonight. Links to videos. A page has been set up on the College of Complex's website in several locations. The announcement for this program. So you can check on that. And there's many videos there, a dozen or so videos, which you can look at your leisure. And although I'm not a capitalist, I will give an advertisement. I'll limit it tonight to next week's upcoming program. Jane Addams Senior Caucus will be conducting a teach-in on Medicare, Medicaid, and healthcare in the United States. Okay, so that's next week, a teach-in. Hope to see you there. Thank you. Take it away.
All right, go ahead, Dave.
All right, any more announcements?
All right.
Hearing none. Tonight, our program presenter is Dr. Jian Li, and she's going to talk about China.
Okay.
Dr. Li.
All right, Jian, you ready to go? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I will do the share screen with the PowerPoint. My presentation today has two parts. The first part is on cultural critical thinking, and the second part is understanding China. The reason that I do this, there are two reasons. One is I'm a cultural anthropologist. So I think having a better understanding of culture is very important to open up our perspectives to see different cultures, critical thinking as well. So that's the first part. And second part is understanding China. So let me see if I can
Yeah,
do.
right at the top,
Yeah.
what's the slideshow?
I show and make it bigger, huh? Okay,
Slide showed in front of the beginning.
okay.
Right there. There you go. And then you
Okay, so I'll start right from here. Let me see, this kind of,
right click your mouse. There'll be a
okay. So the first slide here that shows that the iceberg is a very well-known picture to indicate the surface level of culture and the deep level of culture. What we see, especially other cultures, you only see the surface. The deep culture is harder to see. Whether it's personal, organization, national, we always have like deeper levels that's harder to see. But when you talk about China, if you haven't been there or lived there, worked there, all your experiences are from Western media, you probably don't see the deeper level of the cultural pattern. There's this definition of the deeper cultural values is the collective programming of the mind that distinguishes the members of one group or category of people from others. And we will talk about some other aspects of culture. This is just a general observation. Oh, how do I go to my next picture? No, it doesn't let me to move as easily. Okay. Characteristics of culture. There are many definitions. I like this characteristics. One is shared among their members. It's learned, not biological traits, inherited from previous generations. And there's dominant and subcultures. And cultures are always dynamic and changes over time, and most likely are taken granted for the people in that culture. So you are not aware of the characteristics of your own culture until when you visit another country or sometimes visit another state or subculture, then you realize, oh, it's so different. There are two things that I like to highlight when we talk about understanding other cultures, especially China, as dominant and subcultures and dynamic and changes over time. Sometimes we tend to think, oh, Chinese people are like this, Communist Party is like this. But really, it's not every Chinese or every member of Communist Party think and act the same way. There's always dominant and subcultures. And also it is dynamic and change. Chinese culture have been, there are things that's less likely to change, and there are things that change every year, even every month. If we don't pay attention to these two characteristics, we tend to stereotyping individuals, stereotyping other cultures, like as if everyone in a subculture, be their ethnic minority or another country, another party, they all like this, but really not so. In order to avoid stereotyping, it's useful to remind ourselves of the varieties of people and opinions, and also changes from month to month, year after year. It's not stay the same. This social scientist Hofstede, very well known in doing cultural comparisons, conducting cultural comparisons, cross-national cultural comparison. And he has developed 6 categories to kind of give patterns of cultures that how they are different. So I kind of briefly mention this. I won't have time to do this, but it's a kind of useful tool. I've sent all the links for this talk to the organizer. You probably have a copy. Power distance index, high versus low. Now, he has like almost every nation. Of course, there's China and the United States. In high power distance, there's more hierarchy. In low power distance, there's more equality among the power structure in different aspects. So if I were to ask you a question to just kind of brainstorming in terms of power structure, do you think which one has higher power structure, higher hierarchy versus lower power structure? The Chinese society or American society, which one has higher power distance? Which one has lower? And when he explains this, he doesn't really put a value judgment. It's more of a description of how societies are different. So don't think like, oh, one must be better than the other. Maybe, maybe not. So let's put it as a neutral, just for understanding purpose. So since I'm talking, but I want to, if I'm like in person, I'll be hearing from you to shout out your answers. Who has the higher power distance, higher hierarchy? If you say China, congratulations. China has higher power hierarchy system and the US has lower. There's comparatively more, actually more equality. Like it's more than like government. Also in terms of like family, like in China, the parents usually have higher power and the teachers have higher power. And of course, the government, the Communist Party have, it's a tradition of kind of like centralized hierarchical society. The second comparison is individualism versus collectivism. That should be pretty easy. US is high in individualism and China is high in collectivism. Masculinity versus femininity, that should be kind of easier. US culture has high level of masculinity, whereas Chinese culture has high level of femininity. Uncertain avoidance index, high versus low, is like risk-taking. Risk-taking is if you have a high uncertain avoidance, that means lower risk-taking tendency. We want to be certain. And in this, US has higher tolerance of risk. Traditionally, China has higher level of uncertainty avoidance. Long versus short-term orientation. China has long-term orientation and the US has short-term orientation. All these across like at a individual level as well as the government level. China, if you know Chinese society structure, that China has like 5-year plan. Every 5 years, there's a plan for economic development, and they try to like fulfill their plan 5 years, and individuals have higher saving rate. In societies, when there's a long-term orientation, they tend to have higher rate of saving. Short-term orientation, they have a very low saving rate because they just like happy today and spend money today, don't care too much about in the future. Indulgence versus restraint. Which one has more indulgence? Of course, US has more indulgence, like short-term orientation, usually like more indulgent, like you want to have fun and spend money and today versus like, be thinking more of the collective, thinking of a long-term restraint. So these, if you go to Hofstad's 6 dimensions of culture, he explains and he has country profiles by survey data. Now, as I said in my previous characteristics of culture, I talk about 2 things, subculture and dominant culture, and culture changes. So even though the numbers that they say if the numbers that they give you is 10 years ago, things will change today. All of these, like individualism versus collectivism. We think like Americans are more individualist, Chinese are more collectivism, but now young people in China is moving to individualists, more individualistic than older generations, both because of demographic in terms of one child, one child. Many families have one child or 2 children, and they have better economic environment. So they are thinking more like towards individualism. Things are changing, right? Long-term versus short-term. Chinese culture now is not as long-term as before. So many of these things has a long tradition, but things don't remain the same. If we only think everything remain the same, then it's not accurate and it's stereotyping. But this kind of interesting broad patterns to think about. Each individual has 3 layers, maybe more layers, but here to be just to make it simple, we have human nature at the bottom, culture, and a personality. So because the human nature is more or less same across, there are variations at the individual level, but as human nature is biologically and psychologically at that level is more or less same. If you say it's not same, you will run risk of being racist. Why do you think one race is better than the other? That's I don't personally, and anthropologists in general would not agree with that kind of bias. At the second level, culture, similarities with certain groups. So culture as subcultures, like not every American think the same, not a Chinese think the same, but then there is an American culture and Chinese culture that's very different, right? So we have to remind ourselves of patterns and sub-patterns and variations. At the last level is personality. Personality like no other person. Each individual is unique, whether they are Chinese or Americans. No individual is the same. It's just like no leaves are same. So because we have shared the same human nature, we can communicate, we can understand if we want to, but we acknowledge that there's cultural difference and personality difference. You respect variations and differences, but also acknowledge that we share the basic human nature. We are basically one race, human race. here are some of the books scientists I have read, and I also mentioned in my previous talk about critical thinking and developing super forecasting skills. This author, Philip Tedlock, is a political scientist and psychologist. He wrote this book, Super Forecasting, the Art and Science of Prediction. And he actually did a lot of focus group, and that group, they compete with CIA predictions of what nations things are going to happen. It's verifiable. And he repeatedly, his group has beaten CIA group and make CIA set up and to want to know why some people are better predictors. When we say better predictors, we are assuming that these people actually have tools to see reality better than some other people, right? So don't you want to learn how to be a super forecasting? If nothing else, if you can forecast stock market, you will make more money than those who cannot, right? So it is a good skill to know about. Philip Tedlock says it's a learned skill. About 2% are super forecastings. Starting point is healthy skepticism. Instead of certainty, I know what it is. You don't acknowledge that there are things you don't know. So that's what healthy skepticism is. Cautious, humble, non-deterministic. Your thinking style is open-minded, intelligent, curious, reflective, and numerate. By numerate, he meant that you need to know some basic, or if you can, have good mathematical skills, probabilistic thinking. You will be ahead of those who cannot think in probabilistic thinking and cannot do math, because at that level it's more technical. And his group who did well, they are pragmatic, analytical, thinking in probabilistic and thoughtful. They are thoughtful updaters. By thoughtful updaters, it means that they always update the information and change their prediction accordingly, instead of saying, I know what's going to happen and that's what's going to happen. But there are many variables in the change. So you have to be always open-minded and update your numbers, update probability as the news coming in. The last one here, dragonfly eye, is that it is said dragonfly has like multiple senses to see the world. So a dragonfly eye is the ability to see many different perspectives at the same time. Work ethic, growth mindset, grit. Well, that's kind of obvious. So this is another summary of the same information. The other scientists, social scientists, that had good points for critical thinking is Anthea Roberts. And there's a TED Talk, I think, by this social scientist. And is she, I think, the world's leading international law scholar, and wrote a book called 6 Phases of Globalization: Who Wins, Who Loses, and Why It Matters, and gives an understanding of complex global problems with different perspectives. So she also mentioned using the dragonfly thinking.
You went through your life, but you never knew what your fucking heart rate was. You never knew how many steps you took in a day. And now that it says on your fucking watch, you pretending that's important information, it's not fucking important information. All you're trying to do is justify your completely shit lifestyle by saying, oh, I took 500 steps today. Who gives a fuck? You're still a fat.
Mute the show.
This is just a glitch. Visual and metaphorical way of thinking using images and metaphors.
Sorry about that, Jian.
Yeah, it's okay. I think this is the internet glitches. This also encourages us to think in visual and a metaphorical way of thinking. I think the reason is if you think in images and metaphors to develop and convey new conceptual ideas, you are less likely to hold a black and white picture and avoid certainty, making arbitrary conclusions. It will open up your mind and thinking multiple possibilities. So this is another summary of what they are saying, that we should go beyond the first instinct. Yes, no, maybe. Maybe it's not good either. It doesn't really give you more accurate information. The better way of thinking is to think probabilistically, not certainty. Dragonfly thinking, multiple perspectives at the same time, ability to hold paradoxical ideas at the same time. This is hard for most people. Think to hold paradoxical ideas, two opposing ideas without making judgment until like you have thought through using many different points of data. This is not easy, but it's something that we could try to develop. How is more important to super forecasting than why? Simple example, if a disaster happened to you, most people will be saying, why me? Why me? Well, who knows why me? Why the house got burned down? Why someone got cancer? Why some unfortunate thing to happen? If you say, why me? Does it help you to solve a problem? If you say how, then it will help you to solve the problem. Break the questions down to smaller components, look closely at your assumptions. All these things actually help you to solve problems. So that's the first part. And I think that first part kind of, I think it's important in its own way, but it's related to what I want to talk about now about China, because when we talk about China, it's very contested. People have their views about China and think they know. So I'm asking you these questions. Have you been to China? What are sources of your information about China? How much do you know about China? How much can you trust the West media on China and other foreign countries? Are you curious about learning about China from those who have been working and living in China? Are you able to suspend your judgment about China before learning about China from multiple sources, especially from non-Western sources? So I have a list of to help you to answer these questions. I've prepared some videotapes, but today time is limited. What I want to do is only show like 5 minutes of 2 or 3 videos. In order to show, I have to stop and to reshare. I've sent these links and you can ask Charlie or Tim to email you. So first one I want to show for 5 minutes is the second one. How worried are the Chinese about their economy? Street interviews. So you hear from people in Shanghai talking about their country. And the second, I'll probably do the Singapore street interviews, what foreigners think about China. And each I would only do 5 minutes. Okay, so in order to do this, I have to stop, share, and reshare. To reshare. I hope I can do this easily. This is my, okay. I've opened up Singapore. Okay, so I'll show 5 minutes here.
From Asian Boss. When you look up news about China these days, you see a lot of headlines titled something like China's economy is collapsing or that it's about to collapse. The world's second largest economy has experienced some huge economic setbacks this year, with factors including its strict zero COVID policy and its property crisis. But how bad is China's economy from the locals' point of view? Do they actually feel like it's collapsing? Our Asian Boss reporter hit the streets of Shanghai to find out.
好，今天我们想聊一下今年国内的这个经济形势以及您对此的担忧程度啊。事实是这样的，最近有很多国际新闻报道声称中国经济衰退，有一些专家预测啊，中国经济将彻底崩溃。你有没有听说过这个中国崩溃论这个说法呢？
如果是彻底崩溃的话，我没有听说过这么极端的推论，但是我有听说过一些专家的预测，就是它的增速会不如以前那么快。
我没有了解，但是我不这么认为。我觉得我们就是国内的经济实际上它在持续的上涨，不会怎么说崩溃啊什么，这不可能的。
之前貌似听说过，然后朋友好像有跟我讲过这个事情，但是我觉得吧，应该还好，应该没有这么夸张，毕竟咱们人口基数这么大，对吧？然后国内的那个需求啊也很大的。
有听到过很多，然后我其实也有在 YouTube 上有关注过一些，可能有个人有那种有组织的会对国内经济包括政体或者情况，包括疫情去点评的一些频道之类的。
那您对这样子的，就是唱衰中国经济的这么一个论调，第一反应是什么？
我觉得很正常嘛，大家站的立场也不太相同，而且可能我们听到的是我们的专家在解读，他们听到的是他们的专家，包括他们自己在对一些数据的解读。第一反应还是不相信，不相信的。然后对这个说法，这个中国经济崩溃是他们一直想要的一个结果，或者是什么样？他们其实不是近期不是在疫情之后，他们其实在长期，一直在讨论的一个事情。当然，跟我们自己的一些经济的一些波动也有关系，他们会抓住这些波动去做一些文章。
这个他言过其实了，但是呢，客观形势就我们现在中国帮过去几年啊，就是纵向比较，我们确实在经济增缓啊，这个速度啊，都是帮前几年确实是放缓，但是走的还是在增长，横向。全世界，我们中国经济还是领先的。
那你在当地媒体中听到了相关的经济报道吗？
有，好像有。
你听到的是什么样的？
就是说，可能是疫情对中国带来的影响，然后中国可能在多少年，然后近年怎么样，或者怎么衰退一直。
Once in a while, something comes along.
Okay, I have to, there's always this ads coming up. Let me see if I can stop that.
So beautiful, you wish it would never end.
当地的媒体会有一些经济的一些相关报
Actually,
道，但
I'm
是
going to change. I'm going to change to another video. Okay, so this one is Singapore. This and it's in English. Let me just for a few minutes.
In Singapore, and recently Pew did a survey. They said it's a survey of the world, but it was predominantly Western countries with a few other countries mixed in there. And predominantly young people in most Western countries appear to have a negative view of China. But there was two outliers, Malaysia and Singapore. So as we're here in Singapore, we thought we'd get out on the streets and try and find some Singaporeans and ask them some questions and opinions about China. Okay, so first of all, can I ask you where you live?
Singapore.
And are you a Singaporean?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay, so if I say the country of China to you, what three words and phrases first come into your head?
Oh, homeland, right?
Mm-hmm.
The CCP,
Mm-hmm.
and Shanghai.
Okay, and in general, do you have a negative or a positive or a neutral opinion of China?
Neutral.
You have a neutral opinion. How have you got that opinion? Is that from reading in the media, or have you visited China?
I used to work there for 4 years.
Okay.
And people I got to know in China, yes, I formed my opinions, and so the media don't affect me so much.
Okay. And in Singapore, do you find the media positive or negative about China?
Generally quite neutral, but a bit more positive.
Okay, that's good. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can I first ask where you're from?
From Portugal.
Portugal. Okay. Now, if I mention the country China to you, what three words or phrases first come into your head?
So, speed, technology, and electronics.
Okay.
I lived in China, by the way, in 2019, in Shenzhen. Okay.
Oh, that's very interesting because I also live in Shenzhen.
Okay.
And do you generally have a negative or a positive opinion of China?
More for the positive side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you feel that the media in your country of Portugal is negative or positive about China?
I don't speak much about China. I would say neutral for that. The news we see in Portugal, they are either for the good, either for the bad. Mm-hmm. Politically, more for the bad, but like technology-wise and like evolution-wise, more for the good. I guess that is like this obscure thing that people don't really know what's going on inside China.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you've been there. I find that people who've been there have a different view to people who've never been there. And one last question: do you find the media twist the truth about China, or do you think they report factually?
Yeah, I'll say twist in a bit, because since we have very little information from China, usually like the unknown is very scary, right? So people usually go to like the textile factories with no social laws or security. So they usually enhance those facts, and they don't show up so many other great stuff that happens in China.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, can I ask where you're from?
I'm from Luxembourg.
You're from Luxembourg. Okay, and if I mention the country of China, what three words or phrases first come into your head?
Communist Party.
Are you wanting to stop video, Jian?
Yeah, I'm stopping. I'm stopping the video. I just give you a taste of it. I've provided links you can share with people because we are short of time. So I want to continue. I just want to give you a taste of how the awareness of people have different opinions about China, especially those who have actually worked and lived in China. Play from current slides. Have more positive views about China than those who haven't. So that's a interesting point. Now I'm going to give you a comparison of some demography and history. It's a map of PRC, map of the USA. In terms of the geography and the land mass are actually similar size. So this is the comparison data I got from CIA Global like fact book. Of course, no information you can trust 100%, but comparatively speaking, this is relatively but then I'll be also give a caution. There's a lot of data points, but I only pick and choose the data point I want to illustrate. So my selection of data points may reveal my bias. So even though like people say this facts and that facts themselves can be accurate, but what you choose to highlight may reveal bias. It's not only me, but anyone else, right? But for this purpose, I thought these are interesting points. You can go to CIA fact book and look for all the information yourself. History, USA, as you know, has a much shorter history than China. But Chinese history is kind of like, this is from a journal from CIA, that fact book, okay? So here, they started PRC as 1949 because People's Republic of China established that day. But then as a civilization, it goes back to 221 BC, the first dynasty started. The Qing dynasty, 221 BC, and there's some books, some authors, historians will say China is the only country that has a continuous civilization from 221 BC. That's when the first centralized government started. But over the years, over more than 2,000 years, there are a lot of changes. How much is a continuation is open to debate. But that's the first centralized government started 221 BC. In terms of population, you can see China has more than 3 times our population than the United States. The size of the two countries, they're comparable, but density of population is much higher in China. Population growth, that's very interesting. I didn't expect population growth in China is slower than that is in the United States from last year's census data. Arable land, China has less arable land than United States. So just think the pressure on the Chinese government, the pressure of more population, less arable land to feed, to ensure a middle class living standard is harder for the Chinese just from what I would say demographic data information. Economy, so there's the GDP, there's the overall GDP, and then there's a per capita GDP. So in terms of overall economy GDP, China is bigger than the United States. But in terms of per capita, China is much lower than the US. Remember, China has more than 3 times our population. So even if a little bit bigger as a country, but when you have that much population divided by that, it's much lower. Military spending. China has lower military spending, 1.5 versus 3.5. And how much the total number, billions, China is much lower. If you have studied this topic, you will know that the US spends more in the military spending than the next 10 countries combined, including China, Russia, India, all those countries, probably more than the next. If not next 10, last time I remember it was 10, but at least next 5 or 6.
Hey, Deanna, let's try to wrap it up so we can get some question time in for
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I'll probably 10 more minutes or less. Military bases, United States has more than 800 and China has 1. And as I mentioned, this data is from CIA Fabric. Okay, so let me see. Why is not moving to next page? Okay. Economic competition, list of largest manufacturing companies by revenue. If you look at the number, where does China go? Okay, number 8. So number 1, Apple. Number 2, Toyota, Japan. Number 3, Germany. Number 4, South Korea. Number 5, Taiwan. Number 6, Germany. Number 7, United States. Number 8, China. Number 9, China. Huawei is number 9. 10, Ford. The reason I'm putting this list is to give you a perspective that we hear from media, there's a lot of China threat. But if you look at the numbers, the Chinese companies are not on the top list. This is from the Wikipedia list of largest manufacturing companies. There is a TED Talk by this Professor Alison Graham, political scientist, and he reminded us of this Thucydides trap that said it was the rise of Athens and a fear that instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. So the rise of one and the reaction of the other create a toxic cocktail of pride, arrogance, paranoia, and a drug them both to war. And what is the danger here is we don't want to see a war between China and the US, but if there's poor judgment, it might provoke such an unfortunate result. So my questions, I want to see peace everywhere, especially China and the US. So in order for us to really think about this independently and with reason, you have to ask who benefits if a war happens between China and the United States? What might be the triggers for a war between China and the US? What can we do to prevent a war between China and the US? And that is a concern that I have, and I think many of you have. And my last 2 slides are my reflections, and many of them I borrow from Yuval Harari. Global challenges, nuclear war, climate change, technological disruption, such as big data and AI, pandemic, polarization of politics, the rise of nationalism. There's a rise of nationalism here in Europe, in China. And that's it. It's dangerous. When you have rise of nationalism, that's also a possibility as a factor of provoking the war. Global collaboration, challenges and opportunities. Reducing military spending for economic development. Developing green technology to offset climate change. Using big data and AI to reduce work hours. Global collaboration to combat global issues, such as environmental, pandemic, and potential nuclear wars. And we need to think humanity first instead of nationalism. Nationalism is on the rise, but if we try to think humanity as a human race, it will be beneficial for us and for the whole world.
Okay,
So my point, well, I'll wrap up within an hour. My point is we need to seek opportunities, global collaboration instead of confrontation. So actually, allow me to play a last video about 2 minutes to end in a more positive tone, and then we'll start questions and answers. Okay, so I have a very nice video for 2 minutes, I think, almost 3 minutes.
okay.
Clearest reason for music, for culture, is it gives us meaning. We started as an idea, a group of musicians getting together and seeing what might happen when strangers meet. We scoured from Venice to Istanbul, Central Asia, China, and Mongolia, looking for incredible talent.
American orchestra. That's very interesting.
This was like the Manhattan Project of music. No one knew what was going to happen.
I knew there was going to be naysayers.
You're taking this traditional music, mixing it together and diluting these traditions.
Arts is about opening up to possibility. Possibility links to hope. We all need hope. I'm always trying to figure out how I fit in the world, which I think is something that I share with 7 billion other people.
Since I left Syria, I found myself experiencing emotions far more complex. Like, can a piece of music stop a bullet?
The 1966 Cultural Revolution. My parents asked me to learn music to escape.
In Iran, the revolution, chaos. I had to leave. By trying to kill the human spirit, the answer of the human spirit is to revenge with beauty.
I think the challenge is keeping your roots alive.
That's a new way of thinking about music, about what people can do together.
There's no east or west. It's just a globe.
We don't speak perfect English or perfect Chinese or perfect Persian, but we speak perfect music language.
Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I like the last video that gives us hope. Instead of using fear to stir hate, we need to use our better judgment of beauty and hope to build a hopeful world. I'm ready to open up for questions.
All right, Charlie, since you got your hand raised and you're the biggest one going, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, Jian, China may be the oldest civilization, but everywhere in the world, people are embracing what is known as the white European Western civilization or an American civilization. That guy, the example you gave He's a Chinese guy playing Western music. And I was thinking about it. What aspect of Chinese culture is anybody inculcating?
So could you rephrase your question?
Why is nobody inculcating any elements of
Have
Chinese
you got any
culture?
questions about
You mean-
Chinese culture and what you said and stuff?
Do you mean what are the aspects of Chinese culture you can see
Yeah, it's all
in the West, in the United States, is what you're asking?
around the world.
Around the
Even in
world.
China's,
Okay.
they're adapting Western culture.
Okay, so that's a good question. I have two answers. One is that in China and in the US, in many countries, we are enriched by different cultures, not one culture to replace another culture, but enriched by learning different cultures, like learning different languages, learning different cultures. I am a Mandarin teacher in an IB school in Dallas. So my students, they're Caucasians, they're Indian origin, they're African Americans, they're learning Mandarin. And we're celebrating the Chinese New Year. And in Dallas, there are many different ways of celebrating the Chinese New Year. And they're not just for the Chinese speaking community. They're people from all different backgrounds. Today, in about an hour, I'm going to Eisman Center to see a performance show, which includes both Chinese music performance and piano music and a violin. It's the enrichment that you can see. And I know of friends who play mahjong. I know friends who play Chinese martial arts. Their dishes like tofu, vegetarians love to eat Asian food. So our cultures and Chinese, whether in China and United States, we should be proud and pleased that our lives are so much enriched by learning from different cultures instead of being afraid of other cultures or feeling superiority that Western culture is the best culture. Of course, Western culture has a lot of very admirable and good traditions, but so are the other cultures, such as Chinese and Indian cultures.
Great.
In terms of medicine, philosophy, food,
Medicine?
excellent.
Nobody practices Chinese medicine.
Charlie, we gotta go on to the next questioner.
Nobody practices Chinese medicine.
Charlie, we gotta go on to the next questioner. Janice, go ahead, and then we're gonna get a couple
Who
from the.
listens to Chinese music?
Charlie, shut up. All right,
Thank you.
Janice, go ahead.
My question relates to your comparisons between United States and China about arable land. And it's curious that the United States has more arable land that we, exploit at a rapid pace than China. And I know about the Gobi Desert is expanding because of goat herding, I think, for selling stuff. So I'm real curious about Chinese geography and its arable land.
Okay.
Can you expound?
I know somewhat, but not really expert. So with the industrialization, the arable land is like expanding, which means the forests, natural habitat is receding to produce more food, which in a short run, it helps with feeding the population, but long run is detrimental to the environment and can cause flooding and all these negative aspects, as we know about environment damage that over cultivating can cause. So in the recent years, last 5 to 10 years, China has started to pay more attention of planting more trees in desert and stop losing the topsoil, and have made great progress in making more green space, both for the city and for the desert area. But there was a time with the rapid development that environment was paid a great price. But now when the economy and when people's life get better, they can't afford to go back to repair some of the environmental damages it has caused. With global warming, it causes problems. It also creates some more arable land in China too.
Okay, we're gonna get some questions now from our audience. If you're ready, you can go up there, you can stay here, whatever. Let me get the mic on so you can hear everybody. And let's get.
We go up here like we did before.
I think it wouldn't be a bad idea that way. Let me get the camera on you. All right, our first questioner.
Yeah.
Can you?
Hi. Hi. Good to see you, Jen. Thank you. I just caught the end of your talk, but I like the fact that your background is anthropology, and that you're bringing this kind of a cross-cultural perspective to us, and from a cultural point of view. I guess how can we? One of my biggest questions is, it occurred to me that you listen to us here in the College of Complexes. You understand our issues, our complexes. Do you go back and explain it to China? I think we need this kind of emissary, especially to stop the war that our country seems to be waging. I'd like your thought on this hypothesis that the wonderful LaRouche this morning, everybody should watch this. It was a symposium on, okay.
She has limited time.
Okay, symposium on really peace, and around Kennedy and Martin Luther King. And, it's very informative to understand the danger of the deep state and the historical reality of it. And I wonder, how much does China understand? I think they must understand that the people of the United States do not want war, and the people of Japan don't want war, but we have 80 military bases pointed straight at China and Russia. So anyhow, any ideas you have on how to maintain peace in terms of public misinformation of the people?
Sorry about that. We've got limited time. Go ahead, Jian.
My job actually is a Mandarin teacher. But to tell you the truth, sometimes I get bored, just teach Mandarins. I have a lot of other interests. So one of the interests is to understand the world and to share my views about cross-cultural understanding. But it's not really, like, I don't have avenues. And no one pays me to give talks like this. I wish like, actually, I used to have a freelance job as a cross-cultural consultant, communication consultant with a focus on China. And I did workshops for some corporations, including TI. But right now, my job is just a I might do something else, but just like everyone else, like, we're curious, we want to understand. But if I'm not paid to share my views with whether Americans or Chinese, it's unlikely I would do it. Like, why should I do? would invite me. So I hope I can like share more of my views and get paid to do this, but actually no one pays me for doing this, and no one really invited me to do. I volunteered to do. So I just say I'd like to, but it's unlikely that I have opportunities to do so.
All right, we have more questions from the peanut gallery. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question.
Hang on. Let me get you. Okay, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Just sit down.
And my question has to do with what I heard happened in China. It took an area of desert and they converted a whole valley through planting of trees over a 5-year period. Is that true?
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah, it happened. I think, I don't know to what extent, but they're actually planting more trees and repairing environments and doing a good job in a recent 3-5 years.
Bring it up here.
Oh, are you done? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, next, now we got another speak questioner for you. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry for the mic. I'm not used to speaking on the microphone. But thank you, Jian. If I mispronounced your name, I apologize. Very professional and very well done presentation. Although I just saw the last of it. Obviously, you're an expert. I have a simple question, I think.
Hold it close.
Okay, how long do you think the Communist Party of China can maintain power as the younger people will continue to demand freedom?
That's a $1 million question no one can answer. If I can answer the question, I'll be paid $1 million. The only thing that I can say is that the Communist Party now maintains its power because it brings economic prosperity to its people. Most people actually care about education, healthcare, retirement, like most of us, freedom, political freedom. Some people will talk about it, but that's secondary to the livelihood of most people. So as long as people feel their economy and their life have been improving, they will not be like a large protest against the Communist Party. But if the economy collapse, it's like our here election. If the economy is really bad, it's harder for the president to continue his tenure. But if economy is good, people are happy. So actually, like Clinton said, like what did he say? It's stupid, it's economy, something like that, right?
It's economy, stupid.
Yeah, it's economy stupid. So instead of thinking freedom, it's more of economy and prosperity. That's what actually average people on the street cares.
Before we go back online, we got another question. Go ahead.
Dan, it's nice to meet you. I am Dr. Harvey Kaplan.
Look at the camera.
I am the founder of the Society for the Prevention of Irreversible Catastrophe on Earth, also known as SPICE. And I invite you to create a SPICE organization to prevent the irreversible catastrophes that are inevitable if we don't pay attention right now to the most dangerous thing.
Okay.
The most dangerous thing would be an EMP pulse that could destroy the economy of China or the United States with one ball.
We'll get into rebuttals later. In your question, please.
That's a good question, please. It's just context.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is my opportunity.
I'm sorry.
Question. There is always a time delay between the discovery of some fact and the understanding by the general population of that fact. Consider, for example, the asbestos disaster that happened in the 1930s. It was hushed up by the asbestos industry right away. Consider the Titanic. the point at which the ship was mortally wounded by the iceberg, and the point at which everyone on the ship knew that that ship was a goner, was going to sink, had a time lag. We also have a time lag between the understanding that portable nuclear bombs, the size of a football, have been manufactured to last 50 years that can be delivered in a suitcase, and now the entire power of World War II can be delivered in a garbage can sized container deliverable by an automobile.
Okay.
We have to take the weapon.
What's the question?
What's the question?
Can we encourage the anti-nuclear forces of China to take the missiles and remove the weapons and use those weapons as fuel?
Okay.
We have a way of doing that, but with respect, I'm a Harvard honors graduate. I went to Medical College of Virginia and the Mayo Clinic. I'm the editor of the Journal of Environmental Radiology, the founder of this, and I have something to say.
Okay, yeah, but we'll do that during the rebuttal.
Later in the program.
Later in the program, you get a chance to.
I'm sorry, I wanted to ask a question, but I was getting to it. Is there an anti-nuclear movement in China that wants to disarm the weapons and declare, as Mother Teresa once said, the reason we have wars is that we have forgotten that arms are for embracing. You talked about love, about the alternative to hate. Is there a movement in China to disarm that we could engage with our own movement for disarmament?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes. Good.
You'll get a chance to rebut too for about
okay.
5 or 6 minutes. shortly
I am not
Okay.
aware of any movement in China to disarm the nuclear. What I know is that the Chinese government has stated that it will not be the first one to use nuclear. It will only use nuclear as a last resort. But I think if every nation can
Stay online. We'll go to
and
you.
here try not to first to use nuclear, that's another step. But whether China has any movement, I just don't know. Okay, next question, please.
All right, we got a couple online. Enrique, you go next.
Okay. With the recent increase in military activity on the part of the Chinese military, does China have plans to use military force to reunify with Taiwan?
Yes, that's a hot topic. As far as I know, the Chinese government, there's a red line. The red line is if Taiwan does not declare independence, there will not be a military takeover. But if Taiwan declares independence, right now it's kind of like two China. There's a Republic of China, Taiwan, and then the People's Republic of China, that's the PRC. And the United Nations only acknowledge China as as a country, right? Before 1979, Taiwan represented China. Before Chiang Kai-shek passed away, Chiang Kai-shek wanted to recapture China. The nationalists used to claim to be the legitimate government of whole China. Now the Chinese Communist Party claim it is legitimate government of whole China, including Taiwan. But United States, the government policy has been ambiguous in the sense that does not support Taiwan independence, but has a policy of defending Taiwan if it is attacked by the mainland China. So the best scenario is that no one provokes this independence of Taiwan, because if Taiwan is provoked in any way, internally or externally, to be independent, then a war is very likely to happen. But without being provoked to be independent, a war is very unlikely to be developed. So as a peace-loving person, I would want to see a peaceful unification one day and not to provoke any drastic measures at this time.
Okay, Dan and Ilana, you're next. Dan, you got your hand up. You want to ask a question or not? Dan and Ilana? Okay, Charlie.
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead, Dan.
All right, in 1969, President Nixon and Jian Li opened China. They opened it not for people, but they opened it for corporations to come to China and to make money, like Apple, Microsoft, US steel companies went to China. So American money went to, some of it went to China.
Dan, I'm sorry, I muted you by mistake. Unmute again. My apologies, please.
All right, so my question is, China has a lot of money in the bank from America, and America's war with China might be to get that money back. Do you see that happening?
That's a very tough question, and your question is two parts. One part is 1979, the purpose of Nixon visiting China and then make China as a allowing, in a sense, like allowing PRC to replace ROC, Republic China, Taiwan, to the United Nations. There are different theories, but the theory that I hear most is because more of political than economic, or maybe both. The political was the Vietnam War at that time, made it very hard for the US had a way to retreat relatively smoothly because China also indirectly involving or directly involving supporting North Korea. So North Korea, not Korea, the Vietnam, that was the Vietnam War. So China was involved also with the North Vietnam. So the Nixon government probably had some deals with like asking China to help with like negotiating a way for the US to end the war. So that's kind of like the political aspect of it. And economic aspect, of course, business always want to find ways to expand its business overseas to make money. And in the beginning, American business made a lot of money by opening up. Now, I don't know, some still makes money, some lose money. Your question is about, is this conflict as a Chinese want to get money back? Is that what your question?
Do you see the businesses, American businesses in China make a lot of money?
Yeah.
They print books in China and then sell the books in America.
Yeah, like Apple does make a lot of money by having Chinese cheap labor to do. But even if say they cannot make some products and make a profit in China, the capital is going to move to Vietnam and to like lower end of other countries to make money. The capital doesn't really look at the political ramifications. It only cares about money.
Okay, next is Charlie. Go ahead.
Yes, Jian, I saw a documentary today that apparently the Silk Road economic plan of China involves setting up a series of sweatshops in particular Eastern Africa, and selling goods to Europeans. Is this, do you consider such economic activities?
I think you're referring to Beltline Initiative. I don't know a lot about it, but from what I know, actually, Beltline Initiative that extends to Africa has helped African
Sweatshop helps, right? Sweatshops help them.
You don't have to use extreme language to make a point.
I know what a sweatshop is.
The lot of capital, lot of American businesses also use sweatshop. Whether sweatshop or not, and definition of sweatshop is more complex than a single word.
It
In
is.
countries, yes, it is complex. In countries where people are starving, they would rather to work for 50 cents an hour than not to have 50 cents. Okay, so to you to work and not $1 an hour is unthinkable. But for places where food is so scarce, people, they, with 50 cents an hour, they actually can buy food on the table. Okay, so it is more complex than just simple numbers. And that's not the real reason of doing the, what, not the reason of the Beltline Initiative. Like I said, the capital, whether it's China or the West, capital wanted to maximize it, profit, which I don't necessarily agree. I think it's a good idea, but you have to acknowledge things first before making judgment. I have talked to like taxi drivers in the States from Africa, and I've talked to more than 3 or 4 taxi drivers. If you have opportunity riding taxi drivers, some of them are from Africa, and ask them which one, China or United States or some other countries, what do you think their economic activities in their country? And you can look for TED Talks on this topic. So from my cursory interviews or talks with taxi drivers and from TED Talks, actually the overwhelming response to China's Beltline Initiative in Africa is more positive than negative.
I've never thought of seeking information from taxi drivers, but I'll do so in the future.
Can
I
I
mean,
ask a question?
I
when you
mean,
get a
that's
chance?
just one source. It's not the source. It's better to hear from people who came from that country than from 1 or 2 media that you rely on. That's what my previous talk about, from multiple sources, not to have a certainty of what's preconceived idea. You should open your mind and trust multiple sources, not just 2 or 3, your favorite sources.
Taxi drivers
help you to become, if you want to be open-minded and become a better judgment of other cultures, other people, you have to open your mind and to have a humility of talking to other people, including taxi drivers. Why not? If they're from their country, do you not think they know better than you do?
No, definitely.
Raj, did you have a question?
Tim, can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Raj.
Okay, it's my chance.
Yeah, go ahead, Raj.
Okay. Then I want to ask question. I meet lots of Chinese students coming to America to study, and some of them are very sophisticated and very comfortable in America. And we have probably hundreds of thousands coming and going back to China. What impact they have when they talk to Chinese about their American experience, and what impact in general they have, other students they talk to, or other populace, other people in a company they work, they talk to. What kind of conversation going on? Thank you.
I don't really know the answer, but in general, I think it has a good impact that they will introduce new ideas and different practices and things that local people might not like think that way or practice that way. The more opening of new avenues of information and the opening of mind, the better it is for the Chinese society and for American society. Being open and to listen to different opinions is better than just knowing one or two opinions and sources. That's just my general, but I don't know the deep details about this kind of things. Okay, I have 2 more minutes before I have to leave, 2 or 3 minutes, so I'll answer the last question.
In Russian, the Soviet Union is CCCP, and the Chinese Communist Party is CCP. Can you comment on that, please?
Comment on the name. I don't know how to comment. The name, it is what it is. I don't know what's the
Yeah,
question.
it makes no sense. It's 2 languages.
Yeah, but
you know, Tim, that Chinese, they speak Chinese, Mandarin, and in Russia, they speak Russian.
All right. Anybody else got a quick question?
You didn't know that.
Okay, quick question before I have to go.
I have
All
question.
right. We got one more. Oh,
I have question.
all right, Dean. Go ahead, Lana.
Very quick. Thank you. What's your opinion? Right now, very harsh war between Russia and Ukraine, and China somehow involved, you know, because Putin have once in a while, he have meetings with the president of China. So your opinion, if war will progressive, right? So which part China will stand for Russia or for Ukraine? What do you think?
Quick, we got one more questioner. Go ahead.
I'm not sure about this. I mean, I'm not.
I know, but
I'm not in a not in a secret negotiation topics. But my general census is like the Chinese government is probably
Right.
more optimistic in terms of a long run of economic benefit, which way to stand to be better for economic cooperation, less of ideological stand. That's my guess, but I don't know exactly.
Lana, we have one more question.
No, very quick. But you know, Ukraine,
No,
hold on.
let's go.
Ukraine suffer right now so much, right? And
Lana, we got another
you know, like
question.
more idea to have to build.
All right, Lana, we got one more question. So go ahead.
That's what my
Question.
question to you.
This, in the United States, 2023 will be considered the year of the woman. It's happening. You're starting to see it in politics. What's going on in Russia with women in China?
Go ahead, Jian.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Are you asking about the status of women in China?
What do you think about? Repeat the question.
What's going on with women in China with politics?
Women in politics. Well, unfortunately, like the top positions in China, there are no woman on the top tier. I think it's unfortunate. But in general, like in economy, in entrepreneurship, there are more women. There are more women scientists and more women in science and engineering, more women in being entrepreneurs, and more women in the workplace. than before. So the trajectory, I think, it is on the rise for women's status, but in politics, in government, women are not fairly represented.
Hey,
Okay.
Gianna, you said you had a hard time. If you need to go, go. We're gonna rebuttals, okay?
Okay, I have to go.
Speaker.
Thank you.
We're now gonna portion out our time for rebuttals. We got a good hour and a half. I'm gonna give everybody 6 minutes. So you need a chair and rebut, or you guys online, we're gonna do 6 minutes each. We're gonna do 6 minutes each in the rebuttal since our speaker had to leave us. Lana, since you were there already, you got 6 minutes to say your piece if you want to say it now. Okay, rebutters, we're gonna.
Telling me?
All right, who else is gonna rebut? All right. All right, go ahead. Yeah, just hand him the mic and I'll put the camera on him. Just hand him the camera. I'm gonna put the mic on you. You got 6 minutes, Sid. Go ahead. This is rebuttals now.
Okay, I don't think my sign is staying there.
No.
So remember, I want.
Raj, we'll get you next. We'll do
Okay.
Sid, then we'll do you.
Somebody asked about freedom. China has brought more than half its population out of sheer poverty. And that is freedom. If you have people that can't work and feed themselves,
I don't know.
and they have no way of making a living, how is that free? Just to get up and talk is meaningless. You have to be able to make a living, have food on the table, pay the rent, and things of that nature, which is basic to freedom. Without that, there is no freedom. And as far as China is concerned, as far as desertification, there's people there that are working to make the desert cool. They done that in this field, and they're doing that in China too. And they're growing food just about everywhere. On the hill, in the backyard, everywhere. China is moving in the right direction, which is forward. The United States is moving backward. People here, maybe 3/4, have only maybe 1 or 2 months rent to get by. And if they get laid off from their job, they won't be able to eat. People are bringing in food from a lot of places, like if you go to a black church, they try to get food for the people in the neighborhood. United States is going backwards. And the United States puts more into armaments than other countries combined. That is not going forward, and that is not freedom. The United States is an imperialist country. It's been so since 1898, when they invaded Cuba and Puerto Rico. And when they invaded Cuba, the rebels were just about to defeat the Spanish. And that's why they invaded them. And then they went to Hawaii, they went to Puerto Rico, and you examine Latin America. The United States has always
Speaker had to leave.
supported
I don't know. I just got
Every
it on
one
the
of
back end.
them.
of
Maybe
the-
not the Valiant, but these. Oh, yeah, not Allende. Allende tried to improve the country, and the United States brought in Pinochet, who's an out fascist and supported by the United States.
Okay, is that it? All right, Charlie, you're next.
But I would.
All
Charlie,
right. Unfortunately, our speaker had to leave early, but I will cover 4 points tonight. Number one, she presented, for some reason, videos in which they randomly selected individuals on the street to solicit their opinion. Now, I don't know what value that can be, because that's just a random selection of listening to somebody who knows what. They now maybe know nothing whatsoever regarding the subject matter. So why would you solicit their opinion? I mean, there are many subjects I don't know anything about. It does no value to solicit my opinion on those subjects, or record it, or then broadcast it to other people. You will seek out subject matter experts, just like I do in trying to schedule speakers for the college. We want people with some background knowledge, experience in the subject matter. A speaker even asserts that I should solicit opinions of taxi drivers. And that I cannot understand at all. But nevertheless, it's not to diminish the opinion of the individuals, but we have to consider the source. I mean, I hate to kill the messenger, but I found that segment to be of little or no value to me. Some interest perhaps in getting discussion going, for showing the range of opinions. That's about it. The second thing is the China Road Economic Plan appears to be a means of China getting these countries in debt to them and setting up a network of sweatshops and selling these things, marketing them to such as Europe. This is not a positive economic plan. I don't think they have any interest whatsoever of those nations. That is not a foreign aid program by any means. They win by getting paid interest on their loans with surplus capital, plus the end product of which is a network of sweatshops. Now, there's nothing to stop an employer from paying a prevailing wage rate. We have debates in the United States here. You have to pay a living wage. Now, it's one thing to demand that we have a living wage paid to people across the United States, but when it comes to other countries, we accept the fact of paying less than a living wage. I find that totally unacceptable. The third thing is, I'd like to notify the gentleman there of at least about 15 years ago, Joe Myers spent an entire evening, I believe he was talking about electromagnetic pulse, which is a serious issue. However, we've already had a program on that issue at the college complexes. Mr. Myers was a doctorate in physics and alerted us to the dangers of that situation. And it certainly is a prevailing one right now. I'm in the activist pacifist community. The current legislation regarding nuclear weaponry is to no first strike foreign agreements. No first strike is the issue that's on the table. Is that Butler? Good to see you, Butler. How you doing? All right, and the fourth thing is, I was thinking about this myself, and we've even had a program on this, but there's something called the culture of Western civilization. If you want the derogatory term, is the white European males. Nevertheless, it has spread for one reason or another, largely through colonialization, but has become the predominant culture of the world. Now, amazingly enough, even in countries where we're talking about Chinese culture, I was trying to do an inventory, and I can't perceive any aspect of the Chinese culture that is being inculcated in the United States. As you mentioned, even the food served in Chinese restaurants, I'm told, is not the same that you would get in a restaurant in China. It is American cuisine masquerading as Chinese. General Chow's chicken, for example, the most popular dish, was invented by a chef in New York City, in Chinatown. Anyhow, as a matter of fact, even in China itself, it appears that the young people are more inclined towards Western culture. They watched, I saw a thing that they were watching American movies. They listen to American music. The thing about some of the things about the culture, I don't know of anyone who listens to Chinese music. The late Lee Hubble, who was a classical pianist, told me that Chinese music only hurt his ears. So that's what I mean. It is a civilization, but we've taken some technology that they have, but I don't perceive it as being a culture that has any great influence in the world at large. I'm not an expert on culture, but since that was the topic tonight, that I will throw in. Anyhow, thank everyone for coming tonight. Good to see quite a few in the restaurant. Take care.
Next.
He might go next.
All right, no, I got, now just stay right there. Your camera's on. You just go ahead and rebut right from where you're at. Sit down. Yeah, you're on camera, so go right ahead and rebut. And then I'll get you next, Raj. Go ahead.
We'd like to talk about.
Turn on the mic.
Can you make him the big picture? We'd like to talk.
I will. Go ahead.
Maybe if he went up front or something.
All right, why don't you pause that?
Okay. You want me here, there? or-
Just stay right where you're at.
Okay, we'd like to talk about, other countries and how they treat their own people, and that causes,
Use the mic. Use the mic.
They can hear you. And that causes, the communists or the fascists or whoever rush to new.
I got it.
The fact of the matter is, we really should occupy our business with our own problems. Let them follow our example. People here in this country have problems as deep as you find
No, I
in
know,
some of these
he's there.
countries. Poverty in America, in some places, is as bad as some of the poverty in other countries. We should immediately take a look at that, take action, so that we can, when we point our finger at other countries, we should not be afraid. Right now, we should be embarrassed. There are places in the United States where people are living as badly as in some other countries, right here in the United States. We can correct that. It can be done. And it isn't going to cost too much money. Unfortunately, we have made that and other issues such that
It isn't the politicians. It's the poor people that are suffering. And if you want to have a revolution in this country, it's going to come, and it's not going to come from somebody in a fine shirt. It's going to come from people in factories and elsewhere. People are getting angry. You'll notice a large number of people are joining, efforts to get their businesses organized, and you're going to see more and more and more because people have had it enough. They will only stand so much, and it's a good thing because what's going to happen is we don't have to force the guys behind the business. We just need to organize people, make them realize in every business, it isn't the guy at the top who is the man who makes it all happen. It is the person who does the work. The ordinary worker, the guy and woman who goes to job every day, making, in many cases, money that is hardly enough to help their families. Now, this can go on for a certain amount of time, but what comes on after that are riots and eventually revolutions. And I'm not representing some political organization that is trying to do that. The fact of the matter is, history shows that when you make people hungry enough, they get mad. If you are someone who is trying to save this country, bring us to where we really should be, we need to start helping the guy working in the factory, working in the offices, giving people an opportunity to make the changes necessary. I have been in unions and I have helped change in the union that I was in. And it worked. It worked because of the fact that we and management worked together, not fight together. We can do this. We can do this as a country. We can do this in countries that follow our example. It's not too late, but I guarantee you, if we don't take action now at a time when our whole business is really falling apart in some places. Now's the time to correct it. And the way to correct it is by getting the people who know most. The business that really goes on in the factory, really goes on in the office. Talk to these people, get them going, get the man and woman in the street going, and I guarantee you, we'll find a much happier America. And if we have a happy America here, others will follow our example, and we'll find along down the road a much happier world all around. We won't need to have a communist party, a Nazi party. People will be able to move along this line. And I guarantee you, if we don't do it, we're going to have a lot of problems we wish in the beginning that we didn't do something about. Thank you.
Okay, Raj, you're next.
Okay, I thank you, previous speaker. I think he said it right. You know, we need to be ourselves perfect, and we are less than perfect. And not that Charlie over the years may not have gone to a Chinese restaurant, but when I came in this country, my first outside dinner took me for Chinese. Okay, so the most important thing is that we are having our own problems here in America. And the few months back, I don't know, he misspoke, but he spoke. President Biden said that we need more Chinese goods. And I said, how is that? Because Chinese goods are creating inflation law. Now, couple of weeks back, they say our economy increase, our economy gets better, inflation getting little lower. Yesterday, I went to Mariano's and I like to buy shrimp that comes from China, but prices has gone up, so I stopped buying. Yesterday, prices has gone down, apparently, and next thing I hear is they're back China, they're getting out of the COVID and with all the problems, and they're increasing their export, and economy is going to boom there. So I mean, I personally think that Americans and all over the world, we have benefited because of China. Chinese cheap goods was better than Japanese cheap goods and Taiwanese cheap goods. And if you go at any home in America or anywhere, whatever computer, everything, most of the things cheaper are from China. And it keeps our inflation low, and ordinary people can afford it. I go to dollar store, and dollar store, I mean, it's almost everything is from China. So we need China. If America and China goes to war, whole world is in trouble. We went to war in Ukraine, and we have a inflation, and all Europe has a recession. So the going to war that President Biden is hunking about, it's not right. It's wrong. America had to get its sense in order that what is not only good for us, but good for the whole world. And China bashing is not going to solve a problem. Like it or not, China has a huge population, and China has about several million engineers. Okay, how many we have? They have an expert and they're hardworking, they're hard educating than we have in America or we have any other country. So China is not going to go away, and you're not going to go to war and destroy it, because how many bombs you have to throw to kill a billion people? Come on. I mean, America, they destroy West Coast, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, we'll be in trouble. So I do not buy, and that lady probably she's biased to China. Like a Charlie is biased to America, Charlie is biased to Union, and others, and other people may not be particularly Republican, don't like unions. So those things are there. I mean, that is not a problem. I am worried about what Biden took us to the Ukraine war. There was no reason to go there. And now, since it started, he trying to cover up the China so that he can go to war with them. And that is wrong. That is a policy John Foster Dulles during Eisenhower era had. And that had caused lots of damage to America. It created an ugly American, and lots of countries, and they did not advocate democracy. They did not advocate freedom. Whole of the Africa, America prevented Africa from getting a freedom. America, we are going to a war in name of liberty, in name of freedom to other countries, but we did not help all over the world. We did not help Iran. We did not help Iraq. We did not help Middle East. We did not help Africa. We did not help Latin America. We did not help this country for getting a freedom. If you want to get a freedom to this country, we destroy them. We made it very difficult in Latin America to get a freedom, or get Latin American government to get an order, or poor people to get paid, or poor people to get a better economy. We did not do it. Okay, it is time.
Raj, can you wrap it up, please?
It is time that America. My time's up?
Yeah, your time's almost up, Raj.
Okay, 1 second. Okay.
All right.
So we have, give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, we have to worry about the people in other countries, and we have to do it without going to a war, because war, they are not winning. We haven't won a good war at all since after Second World War. So let's get out of that and let's stop no war and let's start to learn to diplomacy. Let's learn to appreciate other country and let's appreciate our poor people and our hardworking people and our people in trouble. Do you know how much it hurts to retired people when there's inflation going on? Tough. I mean, they do not get more money from federal government. Thank you.
All right,
I
go ahead.
appreciate it.
You're next. Go ahead. You're next.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is the bottom line about human rights that was introduced by this country by Thomas Jefferson? The Declaration of Independence was mistaken in its very first sentence, which says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. It created the Civil War. It created the women's suffrage movement. That one sentence should have been written. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all humans are created with equal rights before God. This is a general constitutional principle that should apply to China, Iran, Russia. All humans are created with equal rights before God. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What a beautiful concept. But what tragedy that we have not protected everybody's health, that we are at the edge of war, at the edge of EMP, that we're allowing octogenarians and oligarchs to be 16 inches away from a red button that could kill everybody. Because we're really close to a point where a single mistake could wipe out everything that humans have created on this planet, because we have this evolving COVID epidemic that cannot tolerate, I've lost the microphone.
No, you're fine. I just turned it down a little bit.
Cannot tolerate the possibility of a radioactive cloud.
He just asked me to turn it down a little. Okay. That's all right. They can
Could
hear you
not
fine.
tolerate the possibility of a radioactive cloud mutating a virus into something that we cannot cure. Who knows how many Einsteins or Mozarts or other geniuses we have lost by not giving everybody good health care and not protecting ourselves and everybody by an international edict that there should be no more wars, that there should be negotiation for everything, that there should be protection of everyone's health. What about all these freezing people that are immigrants or homeless? Why is it that we don't have inflatable dome containments, inexpensive housing with cots and the like to house these people, instead of putting them in $600 hotel rooms and flying them around the world as Biden is doing, wasting our money?
You know what?
We should be in a situation where we hold internationally the constitutional right to every single human being having food and shelter and health care. You know how much food we waste in this country by throwing it in the garbage? We don't need to have famine or thirst or people dying in mines as a result of mining cobalt and other things that are not necessary, because we need to set up a society for the prevention of irreversible catastrophe on Earth, because the death of any human being, regardless of sex, race, tribe, or creed, is an irreversible catastrophe. How can you bring back your father or mother or grandparent that died as a result of a stupid accident? We need to set up citizens against stupid accidents and a society for the prevention of irreversible catastrophe on Earth, because we cannot allow. I'm sorry?
We have to figure out when life starts.
That's a very good question. So the question is, can we allow the economic system to murder human beings who are already possessing most of the qualities of nervous system function? And I think it's a very good question whether Roe v. Wade was legal in the first place. And I am an advocate that we take care of everyone, that we even give animals care. You know, they're rescuing animals on the southern border. They've got something like 200,000 dogs that have been rescued in this transit of the 3 million that have come to this country who are freezing. We're not heading for global warming. That's a fiction. We're heading for an ice age, folks. We need to protect these people from freezing to death because people don't die because of lack of air conditioning. They die because they freeze to death. I advocate that we all write Governor Abbott of Texas and advocate that he install emergency inflatable shelters for all of these people, inflatable greenhouses. They're very inexpensive, and protect these people from dying stupidly because they're fleeing oppression that, like Nazi Germany, happened in the 1940s, where this country sent boatloads of Jewish refugees from the Holocaust right back to the Nazis to die because they were discriminating against these people because they had this kind of religion or that kind of skin. We have equal rights before God. We should support the fact that every human has a right to exist. You're born, you're blessed by God to have an opportunity to make something of yourself. We ought to stand up for the right of every human to not be annihilated by the stupid application of overwhelming force by someone who is politically powerful enough to be 16 inches away from the red button. I have devised a way to take nuclear weapons and generate electric power. We don't need windmills. Windmills cost more in terms of the energy to create them than they ever create. Gasoline cars. I heard yesterday that the creation of an electric battery for an electric car produces as much CO2 as a standard gasoline car over 8 years of existence. Where's the CO2 savings in that? The whole electric car movement, the whole green energy movement, the windmills, the solar, everything is all about money, the magnetic field of money. What happens when all of a sudden the technology appears so electricity is available to every human being on the planet in unlimited quantity, and we don't need to charge for it because the matter and antimatter reactors are coming. I am an inventor of a antimatter reactor along with Nikola Tesla that has the possibility of eliminating the need of windmills. And I am of the belief that we need to get away from this Green New Deal that Ocasio-Cortez and Kamala and Nancy Pelosi and the various other politically oriented moneymakers are pushing upon all of us. So I put forth finally, we need to set up an organization. I invite everybody here to be members of the Society for the Prevention of Irreversible Catastrophe on Earth and to contribute to a journal that we're going to have monthly. Send in your articles. We'll give you an address. Also, Citizens Against Stupid Accidents. How many stupid accidents do we need to take before we learn the lesson and stop making those accidents happen? That's my 2 bits. I'm Dr. Harvey Kaplan. I am the editor of the Journal of Environmental Radiology.
Okay, you want to go next, Ellen?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to get you on that stick, Ellen, so you're on the microphone. Just stay right where you're at. We got you. Sid, can you move back just a tad bit? So, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
thank
we can see you. We can see you now, Ellen.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone. I'm particularly inspired by Dr. Harvey Kaplan, and so I'll comment on that. Also, I love Jian's point of view. The importance of free speech is this free speech forum we have. I discovered, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. We have to have free speech, but most importantly, we need freedom of information. That's what we lost in the pandemic, and it was a pandemic. That's why they made it a psychological operation of population control. And it's the only thing that explains it. They've got, America's Achilles heel is ABC, atomic, biological, chemical warfare, that we develop in our labs, Sandia, Promise, or the Sandia labs and Los Alamos. And actually, there was a great thing today. The LaRouche group is, I don't know that much about their politics. I don't think they've got great chance to win because the two parties don't want them there. But what convinces me, I've been doing research the last 3 years on this stolen prosecutor management information system, stolen from by the Justice Department and the CIA. William Casey, treason, took the software, the artificial intelligence, this like a revolutionary ability, like the way the internet works. It can lock into any site. They developed that so that prosecutors in the federal government could keep track of cases, lawyers, who the criminals are, and track them. The criminals from actually the Mossad in Israel worked with William Casey, Earl Bryant, stole it, put a backdoor on it so that they can hack into our Treasury, our IRS, and change. Therefore, the records of the Justice Department are complete frauds. They then support a police state with artificial intelligence fusion software, which they can go in and scrape the criminals. They're the state criminals. They change the laws. They get rid of the laws. They deregulated crime, deregulated honest services, deregulated the fairness doctrine, deregulated every, civil rights, the voting rights. They push it back to the states. This is called states' rights. I grew up in the South. I know they had a particular thing about states' rights. It's not the Civil War. It's not over slavery. They say it's push it back to the states. Basically, they've dismantled the Constitution, our democracy, and pushed it back to the states. So we've got 50 feuding, castles of governors who get to make up their own rights, their own states. It pushes it back. So Missouri wants slavery, they can have slavery. That's the states' rights. They basically written out people's rights, human rights. It's called originalism. Okay, they got the idea from Carl Schmitt, the same guy that helped, they worked with to come up with the Third Reich. Was they did a false flag. They say a communist burned down the Reichstag. Oh, there's a war. Communists are trying to get Germany. So now it's a war of all against all. Let's suspend all the civil rights and put in a dictator. And the dictator, we need to, because there's a war on terror now. It's a war of terror. We call a war on terror. We created 9/11. We created the pandemic. We created the.
What does any of this have to do with China?
And we're trying to create it on China. Charlie's part of it. Charlie's told me originally that he's in the FBI, right? In the Red Squad. He's the covert one, that goes in here to make sure that democracy, we can't organize. I can't talk about this pandemic. I can't talk about the fact that we made they want us to think it's the China virus. No, it's the Fort Detrick, United States Department of Defense virus that was made, right? It's made at Fort Detrick.
And funded by Fauci and the National
Funded by Fauci. Thanks. We've got a medical doctor, a specialist in warfare and radiation warfare, and how our government is a Nazi government. We took Hitler out of there, sent him to South America with Barbie and Mengele. And this is called political Zionism. They're taught, teach our police and Charlie Paddock, our CIA, our FBI, our Department of Defense. They've been working together. We are a police state, and we've got the greatest psychological operation of propaganda. That's how they use this software with Cambridge Analytica, MI6, the Crown of England, Pfizer. We're run by it's feudalism, a monarchy. There are no rights here at all, just peons. All we have are big lies, and because they have totalitarian control of the media, We are dumbed down as we could get. William Casey, who stole that software, I'm determined to get to Congress and, get them. They say they're going to form a new church committee and that they're going to look for everything illegal that's in our thing. That was announced yesterday. We've got to go show them. I know exactly what's being hidden behind all this classified stuff. They know it's there, right? But we just have to get past their Praetorian guard of Charlie and other censors that keep us from talking
Are you
about
ever
it.
gonna talk about China?
We're going to have total information. They have total information awareness. The same Iran-Contra guys that put that in. The information belongs to the people, the media, the airwaves. That's the fairness doctrine, belong to the people. We need total knowledge management, and it belongs to us, not Charlie, not the police, not the government, not Biden, not Trump, not the parties.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. We have another rebutter now.
Hopefully they're gonna talk about China.
Let me get you on camera. Let me get you on camera and we'll get you right there. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to say, make a comment about China. It was mentioned here that China was able to bring hundreds of millions of people out of starvation and poverty into a modern state. True as far as that goes, but a couple of historical facts. Look, Mao Zedong, when he and the Communist Party instituted a 5-year plan, a series of 5-year plans. In 1950 was the first one. And the result of that 5-year plan, which was for workers supposedly, and people healthy and happy and everything, was tens of millions of people dying of starvation. I'm not making this up. This is historical. That's the Communist Party of China and what they did economically in the 50s. It did not work. Mao Zedong realized it did not work. Later in his life, and his protege, Zhou Enlai, I believe his name was, they decided to open up their economy and they're to the west. And they created economic zones, capitalist zones, if you will, along the whole coast of China that triggered a boom in the standard of living for hundreds of millions of Chinese. They basically, the Communist Party and the leadership in China basically said, well, let's try and get capitalism a shot here. And it worked out very, very well. Now, the Communist Party has reasserted its control and is trying to change the narrative and is there is no personal freedom of expression in China. I mean, you get to a certain point and they drag you and put you in jail. As far as the workers in China, the workers, there's so many things that we don't even know, but the American workers are much better protected and much better shape than the Chinese workers. I can assure you that. The final thing is, I work with a company called Mandarin Consulting, tutoring and giving counseling to very bright young Chinese people from China. There are 300,000 university students from China here. The government pays for them. They go to university. And let me tell you something. These kids, they want their freedom of expression. They want to make money. They want to do well. Their number one goal is to work for a global 500 company for a couple of years and then go back to China. But when they go back to China, they're not going to turn it off and give up their freedom of expression.
Okay, is that it? All right, Sid, I'm going to let you go on a second time. So go ahead. All right, when you're ready, Sid, let's get you on next here. Okay, Sid, go ahead.
Tim, we got Perez got his hand raised.
All right, well, get in next. Okay, we'll get, all right, well, Enrique, go ahead. We'll get you next. Okay, hang on, Enrique.
How many minutes do I have?
6.
Okay, that
Go ahead.
should be enough. Am I ready?
Yes, you're all set. So go ahead. We'll get you next, Enrique.
Okay, we underestimate China at our own risk. China is clearly our greatest geopolitical threat. Recently, at least 2 relatively high-level Chinese officials have been caught on video bragging about how China will overtake and conquer America. And these comments were made before the so-called Trump riots at the Capitol in DC that the radical left clearly planned and orchestrated ahead of time. While America has about 2.5 centuries of experience as a nation, the Chinese as a people have nearly 4 millennia of experience existing as a political sovereign entity in one form or another, be it a kingdom, an empire, a collection of kingdoms, or a military interregnum ruled by a foreign occupying power or currently a communist dictatorship. China has over 3,000 years more experience than we do at running an empire, meddling in foreign affairs, and playing politics. For example, in the time period when the legendary King Arthur was popularly thought to have lived and ruled, and when the British Isles were basically in a state of tribal warfare after the fall of the Roman Empire, the Chinese people had already consolidated themselves into a series of dynasties that ruled China with an iron fist and a cohesive purpose. Fast forward to the 900s, when Viking raiders were terrorizing Europe and chopping off heads of monks, and when most of Europe lived under the bondage of some king, prince, or tribal leader. During this time, China was inventing gunpowder. And in the 13 to 1600s, when Europe was still recovering from the bubonic plague, also called the Black Death, which wiped out 1/3 of Europe, and which DNA tracing proves possibly came from China. Imagine that, a deadly plague coming from China. Where have we heard that before? European nations were fighting amongst themselves over small buckets of territory and over which second cousin, once removed in some royal family, was next in line to inherit any given throne. In the latter part of this time period, the 2 main European rivals, the Protestants and Catholics, were pretty much in a constant state of simmering conflict or outright open warfare. The Catholics themselves, for a time, could not decide if the Pope should reign from Rome or Avignon, France, and people were burned at the stake if they did not toe the official line. But during this time, China was building the Great Wall. China's historical resume is not something to laugh at or to take lightly. The Chinese are geopolitical experts who take history very, very seriously. As a people, the Chinese are extremely patient. America, on average, thinks in terms of election cycles, whereas the Chinese think in terms of decades or even centuries. For about 65 years, back in the 1200s, the Mongols conquered and occupied China. Yet, it has only been 20 years since America granted permanent most favored nation status to China, which they have proceeded to take full advantage of, including by taking advantage of America itself in all things related to trade and economics. Now, if the Chinese are able to bide their time over 65 years as a conquered and occupied people before they got their country back, then surely the 20 years since their ascent to global economic, political, and military power began is but a small time to wait for the long-term rewards that the Chinese clearly desire and see themselves well on their way to obtaining. So I say again, China has been playing this game for thousands of years and playing it quite well. We underestimate China at our own risk. Thank you.
All right. All right, Sid, go ahead.
A couple of years after the Second World War, Dean Axel, who was part of the Truman administration, got together the ruling class of the United States, the big manufacturers, the bankers, and people of that nature, and made a speech to them. The speech was that if we don't have a large economy, the United States is going to go back into the Great Depression that happened in 1929. And we've been doing that since the end of World War II, the Cold War, and wars in Vietnam and in the Middle East and so forth. We have basically a war economy. And without a war economy, we've been back in the Great Depression. And that's what's happened.
Okay, now I'm gonna do my rebuttal next here as we sit down for a brief minute or two, because I got a couple of things to say. First of all, that knowledge of nuclear weapons and the knowledge of nuclear power is gonna be what's gonna save this economy, save global warming, and save the country. When you talk about antimatter reactors, I don't think so, because right now there is a little thing, it's called fission. And there's a better way of doing fission than what we're doing now. And that's called uranium-235, thorium breaking down the fuel cycle to uranium-233 with thorium. And as a matter of fact, there's a reactor going right now in China, what they used to develop with our research first in the 1960s. See, the thing is, there's something called the liquid fluoride thorium reactor, which operates on a liquid coolant, and it's a totally safe reactor because you have to keep it
Nonsense.
cooling down. Charlie, it's not nonsense. You got to look at your research. The thing is, these small modular based reactors will be the source of infinite power if we ever get them commercialized. And the thing is, it can be safe. It can
Perfectly dangerous.
I don't think it's dangerous, Charlie. You just don't know your nuclear facts.
Charlie, one fool at a time.
Yeah, one fool at a time. But the thing is, I've spoken about this many times before. You can go to the Thorium Energy Alliance webpage with a guy by the name of, who's also spoken here once or twice. His name is John Kutz, and he talks about it. You know him. Good. And I've met him myself a number of times. He's spoken here. You should get a presentation ready for the college, my friend. Yes, Charlie. All right. Anyway, but with that, and the other thing that the world needs is what we have been doing for the last 30 years up until very recently, and that was when in 1989, when the Berlin Wall fell, the world got connected. The world started trading together. The world started to interconnect a little more, and that's what kept the peace. The thing is now, like before World War I, we're too damn connected, and we're all starting to get prosperous. And the next thing you know, we start thinking too big for our britches. Hopefully this time it will work. The only thing I have to say is history has been dominated by leaders that have done the impossible, and the button exists. Hopefully we'll never have to use it.
How do we dispose of nuclear waste, Tim?
Burn it up on another reactor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce the electrostatic fusion reactor, which is 72,000 times more efficient than fission. That generates 1/1,000,000th the waste, and that will make thorium a irritating, unfortunate deviation from the truth. All you have to do is charge radioactive materials to a little over 1,000,000 volts, and they emit positrons, and these can be captured to generate 52 billion watts of power per generator. And the small modular reactors are ridiculous. They spread the possibility of nuclear waste contamination around the globe, and they will be completely shadowed when the electrostatic fusion reactor is practically demonstrated in the year 2023. Before fusion, before anything else, my name is Dr. Harvey Kaplan. I am the inventor, along with Nikola Tesla, of this particular invention.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk to anyone about it, including you.
Get a presentation ready.
I would be happy to. No problem. I'll be here next week.
Well, we got to check with Charlie to get you on the schedule.
We all put on the schedule. As to the comments about China, I fully agree. We are in a situation where Nixon opened the door but did not protect their rights. And the humans in this country have much better rights than the humans in China. And that is an unfortunate thing because everybody has the right of freedom of speech, association, religion, and the press. And that should be guaranteed by a national and international constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all humans are created with equal rights before God. And it's not 3/5 of a black man or just men and not women. It's every single human that is living and breathing has the right to these things, no matter whether you're Chinese, African, Iranian, Israeli, or American. Jefferson messed it up in the first sentence. It was the example for the world that led us all into democracy, and he messed it up in the first sentence, but he was young and inexperienced. We've unfortunately had the experience that came from not understanding that these rights are universal.
Okay, thank you a lot. Now, is there anybody else wanting to do a rebuttal, whether it be online or through the internet? All right. All right. Well, if you have otherwise, we might just close a little early tonight then, unless somebody else has a rebuttal.
What did you say?
I don't think so. So any comments from the peanut gallery up there or online? Margaret?
I have a drawing to show.
All right, go ahead and show it.
All right, wait. I gotta do it online. I gotta do a camera. I gotta turn on the camera.
See him? Oh, okay.
Did you see it?
Let me take a look here.
Yeah, Tim, I'd like to make a few comments.
All right, Charlie. Hang on here a minute, okay? You wanted to share a drawing. I gotta remove the spotlight on the thing. All right, Dan, you got it up? Yeah, okay, Dan, hang on. Yeah, we can see it now, Dan. What does it say?
No war with China.
Ooh, not bad.
Who's going to war?
No war with China.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very clear.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Dan. All right, Charlie, if you have a few more comments, go ahead.
I just wanted to say the topic tonight was the culture of China, which I've studied for a number of years. We really, the Chinese culture was largely, the Asian cultures were largely unknown. As a matter of fact, until the World's Fair of 1893, we had little or no understanding of Asian cultures. It basically was a location for colonial activities, exploitation. I did a little inventory, and we really have not inculcated anything of their culture. Some aspects of it, Confucianism and so forth. Really, I don't know if they would have any relevant acceptance in the United States. Earlier, I heard something here about the failure of communism. I suggest that I imagine China under the Republic was an overwhelming success. And China under the Empress, would you like to return to that? And they were trying to correct that situation. Later on, they in fact did so. So to say that communism was an abject failure. Now, the other thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight at all was that in the late 60s, we found there was a movement in China to eradicate its culture, which really wasn't discussed tonight. They found aspects of it to be less than positive and wanted to eliminate it altogether. It is a fascinating period of history. The Chairman Mao went on for a period of about 10 years. Yes, they concluded that and opened the country up, unfortunately, to capital. We've heard that someone spoke on it. He opened it up to capitalist exploitation. The Americans went in there seeking a source of cheap labor, and profited by it. Now the Chinese in turn are going elsewhere in search of cheap labor. It's continuing. The thing is, you have to look at this as capitalist enterprise, with some individuals for some reason champion here at the college complexes. It eludes me completely. But if you wish to see a network of sweatshops extending across Asia and supplying into Africa, supplying Europe with goods, I don't know why you have something against the people residing in these areas. There's nothing that precludes, if you open an economic installation, one of the requirements I would think would be the provision of a living wage for those who create the profitable goods that you market. But believe you me, the Chinese culture, from what this is why communism is essential. I firmly think that you've got to be careful with a culture that is focused entirely on profitability, which may be the case. And in that situation, communism isn't just a good idea, it's essential. To love, there are things there's no tradition of civil rights or human rights, and labor laws are disregarded altogether for capitalist profit-making enterprises. So you've got a very dangerous situation, and I don't know if we want to permit this to be expanded across Asia and Africa. That's all. Thank you.
All right, Dave, go ahead. You're going to wrap it up.
All right, well, I will say simply this. There was some criticism when Jan introduced footage of cab drivers talking about the situation in China. Cab drivers are just as well informed as anybody else about events in their own country.
Oh, that's really a waste of time.
Charlie, one fool at a time. Now, we
Well, I listen to some Jamoke.
Charlie, shut up.
Yeah, thank you. Amen.
Now, we once had a great president in this country by the name of Harry Truman. And President Truman summed up Adlai Stevenson's loss in the 1952 presidential campaign by saying simply this. He spent more time talking to college presidents than he did to cab drivers. Well, we've got a hell of a lot more cab drivers in this country than we do college presidents. Thank you.
Wrap it up. Dismiss us now.
All right. This concludes tonight's presentation of the College of Complexes. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. Thank you.
All right. All right, let me stop the recording here tonight, and we'll do this. And thank you, everybody.